Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're catching this. I'm Jason Aberbrook, and welcome back to Now to Next podcast. I want to talk about something before we get into our detail today. This morning, just like every morning, I have an agent that goes through news, goes through new research, and puts together um, content, content that's out in the world, really to help me look at signal and to look at trends. And as I was going through it this morning, there was one thread that was running through everything, and I kind of want to talk about it because, well, I shouldn't say I kind of want to talk about it. I do want to talk about it because it's really important. The thread that was going through everything, we deployed AI, but we didn't design it for humans. And when I say we didn't design it for humans, it's not just the AI, it's the moment. So let's talk about that. We deployed AI, we didn't design it for humans. And, you know, that's what this episode's going to be about. Everything else today is kind of just the evidence of that statement. We deployed AI, we didn't design it for humans. But I want to add one thing that's not in any of the news today, but that I'm seeing and hearing in all of the conversations I'm having this week. And it's probably the things that concerns me, or the thing that concerns me the most. Workers don't believe in their leaders anymore when it comes to this topic. Maybe any topic, but specifically this topic. So the gap between what leaders are saying about AI and what workers are actually experiencing has become this big, big trust crisis. I'm going to come back to that because I think it's probably the most important signal. So let's go through some of these. So BCG, a study by BCG, they studied what happened when Lattice, one of the most, I call it the more thoughtful HR tech companies in this space, onboarded AI agents as actual employees, real roles, real responsibilities, actual AI employees that were given seats inside a live workforce. And they documented what humans did next. And you know what they found? Which I'm not even sure how they measured this, but human workers got lazier. They started offloading blame onto the AI when things went wrong. Accountability dropped, engagement dropped, the quality of human output dropped. So we gave AI a job title, and the humans checked out. Now, when I saw this study, my first reaction wasn't surprise. It was like, this depends on the leader. And let me explain what I mean by that, because I think it's really important. The leaders I know who are actually leading full-scale transformations or reimaginations in the past, they're the ones that have been through ERP rollouts or major workforce design where they've been burned. They know it's messy. They're not shocked by this finding, not even a little, actually. They knew. The question is whether they had the courage to say it out loud before kind of the study came out and gave them the permission. But the leaders who've deployed tools rather than redesigned systems, they believed the vendor narrative that AI adoption is a technical project with a productivity outcome. And they didn't do the change math. And I think the change math is so important. That's the differentiator. It's not tenure, it's not title, it's whether you have actually ever led a transformation or reimagination before, whether you've actually felt the moment when the workforce disengages because a system absorbed it. If you felt that, you know it. I've felt it hundreds of times. If you haven't, the study, which I'll link in the show notes, is a gift, and I hope you can read it. Because it's not a story about bad implementation. It's a story about human nature. It's what happens when you introduce something into a system without designing the human response to it. The tech absorbs accountability and humans retreat. I'm going to say it again. The tech absorbs accountability and the humans retreat. What's different now and what makes this moment unlike every previous wave to me is the speed. It's the scale. And it's the fact we're doing this with cognitive work. with judgment work, with the kinds of tasks that used to require a human brain operating at full capacity every single day. So I think, let me ask you a question I think every leader needs to answer, and honestly, not for the board. Who in your organization is responsible for how AI gets onboarded into your workforce? Not deployed, onboarded. Deployment is a technical event. Onboarding is a human one. And right now, like I'm watching organization after organization nail the first thing and skip the second entirely. So I don't think leaders have an AI problem. I think they have a changefulness problem. And that changefulness problem is wearing a technical costume. The thing is, I think the costume's coming off. Part 2. Let's look at the second BCG study that's in the notes. It talks about AI brain fry. And it actually is a little bit gruesome because it has a body count to it. So BCG and Harvard Business Review studied about 1,500 workers and what it actually feels like to manage AI tool sprawl. Now, everyone knows what tool sprawl is. A lot of tools everywhere. Growing list of agents, co-pilots, assistants, automation. What we're building at Now to Next, we're feeling this. All of the things people are now expected to run simultaneously on top of their actual job. That's what they're calling in these articles AI brain fry. I don't know if I love it, but let's just go with it. Cognitive overload, errors from context switching, burnout from the constant relentless need to kind of reprompt, review, correct, monitor outputs instead of doing everything else. And the number that should alarm every person is the significant measurable intent to quit. And it's not because AI is hard. It's not because AI is something that people don't want to use. It's because nobody's designing the experience of working alongside it. We bolted it on. We layered tools on top of tools. We told people just to use it and then measured them against those metrics, like productivity metrics, instead of actually thinking about what is the tax of becoming an AI operator, while at the same time trying to remain a human professional. So, does that make sense? Tax of becoming an AI operator while at the same time becoming a human professional or remaining a human professional. So here's what this looks like for a middle manager at a big company that we're working with. They're running 3 to 4, maybe 5 AI tools, a co-pilot in their productivity suite. They're using an AI note taker, a chatbot for HR questions, an agent that handles reporting, maybe a summarization tool. Every single one of them requires to check, validate, prompt, correct, or manage. Every single day. That's not a human AI collaboration story. It's a human tax on a poorly designed system. And I'm feeling this. In our own little Now to Next company we're building. So here's my take on that fix. And it's a position I'm trying to work towards in all the work we do. We need AI experience design as a discipline with a capital D. What does it look like and what does it feel like? Someone in the organization needs to own the human AI workflow the way that UX team owns product experience, the way a change team owns transformation. It's not an IT person who's thinking about latency, not a compliance person who's thinking about risk. It's someone who wakes up every morning and says, what is it actually like to be a human working along AI, working alongside AI, working along with AI? Where's the friction? Where's the overload? Where are people breaking? Today, that job barely exists. Barely. There's a handful of companies who have started to think about something close to this. But to me, the organizations that build that function now will be the ones that retain their best people. The ones that don't will watch those people leave, and they're going to blame the labor market. when people say to me, which I guarantee someone's going to say after this is just the transition, people will adopt, blah, blah, blah. Yes, they will, but only if we design for the adaptation, the change. If we treat the human experience of AI adoption as something that deserves as much investment as the infrastructure. That's the rewire. That's always the rewire. It's not the technology, it's the human system around it. So part 3 of this is I want to go to a number. I want to go to a number that people don't want to own. And it's going to get a little uncomfortable. 48% of Q1 2026 tech layoffs were attributed at part to AI. That's nearly half. Now let's add some nuance to this, because it really, really matters. How do we attribute these layoffs to AI? It's complicated. Companies are citing lots of reasons. AI is very convenient because it tells a story to investors. I'm not saying every single one of these decisions was AI driven, but I am saying the direction is clear, and it's not going to stop in Q1. And here's the part of the story that, to me, is worrisome. We're talking about junior roles, entry-level roles, early career roles. Andrew Yang says something, it's much easier to not hire someone than it is to fire someone. The people who were supposed to show up, learn on the job, make mistakes in a safe place, and eventually become the senior leaders, were eliminating the on-ramp. Oliver Wyman, they did a CEO survey this week also. 43% of executives are cutting junior roles. 43%, up from 17% last year. That's an OSM. We've nearly tripled the number in 12 months. And now this is where I want to be precise, because I think that blanket condemnation is way too easy. And I don't think cutting the career pipeline is always indefensible. There are tasks that generally no longer require a human doing them. Pretending otherwise is not honest. But here's my position. It's only defensible if we're redesigning the pipeline. What does that mean? Only if you replace what you cut with something real, a new model for early career development that accounts for AI native, an apprenticeship structure where junior talent learns how to think, not just execute tasks, a learning environment that uses AI as a teacher, not as a replacement. Organizations that are cutting junior roles right now are not doing that. They're not redesigning the pipeline. They're not cutting headcount and calling it efficiency. And they're going to feel it. They're going to feel it hard in capability gaps, in the leadership bench, in culture, in 3 to 5 years, or maybe less. That is so important to understand, you guys. Big companies are already going to struggle with this. Add this to it, it makes it more complex. Another story this morning. Fast Company ran a story that I found so fascinating and alarming at the same time. Gen Z workers are now listing AI skills on their resumes that they don't have. But guess what? They intend to learn them. They're manifesting skills. And I get that. As a professor, I get it. If you're a 23-year-old entering a market where entry-level roles are disappearing, and every job description requires AI fluency, you put what you need to get in the door. It's not dishonesty, it's survival. But here's the actual problem that this is creating. Your skills data was already bad. It's already been bad. It's always been bad. Now, people are self-reporting aspiration. Managers don't even really know what they're assessing. They see it. The system's capturing job titles and tenure, not capabilities. And now we're adding a generation that's been trained by the market to inflate forward. inflate forward. So how do you build the skills organization on data that you can't trust? That is another huge component that these signals this week are talking about. It's not whether our people have AI skills, it's whether we have any idea what our people can actually do. Whether our assessment infrastructure can tell the difference between someone who lists prompt engineering or has actually done it as a human. You can't navigate to a destination that you can't see clearly. And to me, where we're at is a garbage in, garbage out moment. And even when we add a talent marketplace or a skills ontology, guess what? Our assessment abilities, I'm not going to even say tools, need to catch up and catch up fast. Part 5, another study. Society for Corporate Governance and NASDAQ dropped a piece on AI governance. And the finding is, I'm just going to say it's uncomfortable. I don't know how else to say it. Boards are asking hard AI questions that most executive teams can't answer. Not partially can't answer, they can't answer them. Boards are asking, what is our AI risk exposure, workforce risk, ethics risk? What's our governance framework? Who owns the decisions AI makes? How are we measuring AI's impact on our people? Most executive teams are walking into those conversations with a list of tools they've deployed, maybe some training, and a productivity number that maybe their vendor showed. That's not governance. It's a sales deck with a logo. So to me, in 2026, if you're a leader walking into a board meeting on AI, most of us are going to in the next couple of quarters, here's what I think we need. 3 things. First of all, a workforce impact assessment. What has AI actually changed about how people work? This is what we call now to next listen. We're listening and assessing. What do they own? What are they accountable for? 2, a governance narrative. Not a policy document, a narrative. One that tells the board how humans and AIs are existing and coexisting, watching the seams and how they work. And then 3rd, a measurement framework that goes beyond efficiency, that touches equity, accountability, and human development. If we start those now, we're going to be ready. If we don't, we are going to be caught off guard by board questions, I swear, starting this month. I want to save this for last because to me it's the real signal. It's the trust collapse. In every conversation, here's what I'm hearing. Workers don't believe their leaders anymore. Workers don't believe their leaders. The gap between what executives say about AI, this will make your job better, this will free you up for higher value work, this is going to be an augmentation, not replacement, and what workers are actually experiencing is creating a massive credibility crisis. Now, I understand why leaders are saying those things, because guess what? Some of them believe in them. And in some organizations, in some context, with some real investment, they're true. But here's the problem, in my mind. When you tell your workforce that AI is an opportunity, and then cut 50% of the junior headcount in the same quarter, you've told 2 different stories. And people are paying attention to that. Which one's real? When you tell people that AI will give them time back and add 6 new tools without any redesign, without any experience, you're once again telling 2 different stories. Trust isn't lost in one lie. It's lost in the accumulation of disconnects between what leaders say and how workers are living. And this is why this matters so much right now. With everything we talked about today, the scapegoating, the brain fry, the resume inflation, the governance gaps, every single one of those problems gets harder to solve in a low trust environment. I hope that makes sense. Every one of those problems is harder to solve in a low trust environment. Change doesn't work when people assume leaders have a different motive. AI adoption doesn't stick when they're waiting for the other tool to drop. The organizations that close this gap, this trust gap, that lead with honesty about hard trade-offs, that show the work on how they're protecting their people's development, that build governance before it's demanded, those organizations are going to have an adoption and an embodiment advantage that no tool can purchase or replicate. To me, trust is a competitive advantage, and right now, it's really scarce. Let me try to close this and tie it together. Sorry, a little bit emotional today. 5 stories. There's the BCG scapegoating study. There's the brain fry research. Sorry. There's, my brain is fried. The 48% layoff number, skills manifesting, the board gap. And the one that I kind of brought, the trust collapse, which I've seen 3 times this week. We deployed AI. We did not design for humans. And right now, we're starting to see the bill coming due. Accountability gaps, overloaded workers, people running out of tokens, gutted pipelines, data we can't trust, boardrooms we can't answer, and in a workforce that stopped believing in the promises. None of this, you guys, is AI's fault. I say this so often. We live in an era where we have the best technology we've ever had, but AI doesn't have agency on its own. It doesn't design organizational systems on its own. It doesn't choose to skip change. We do. So the only question, is whether we're willing to do the hard work, the rewiring, the redesign, the investment in AI experience design as a discipline. The real honest conversation with the workforce about what's actually happening and what we're actually doing about it. I'm spending the rest of my week at high school graduations this week, and I'm watching people optimistic about the future. But guess what? That takes belief. It takes courage. And it takes leaders who are willing to say out loud, we're not just deploying tech, we're redesigning work, and we take that seriously. Almost nobody is moving fast enough, but some are. Be one of the ones that is. Be the organization that moves first on the human side. And let that difference between now and next move you from now to next. I hope this episode was helpful. It's just some things on the top of my mind this morning that I had to talk about. Please share. I'm going to try to do these more often because every single day we're getting hit with signals. And I want to help bring those signals to life for the listeners of this podcast. For me, Jason Averbook, please, please, please work on going from where you are now to where you need to be next. And reach out anytime. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.